So this is part 2 of chapter 39 on plant communication, and what's we left off on was partway through discussing auxins. So basically one of the major functions of auxins, although they do a number of things, is to stimulate cell elongation. And the way that this is believed to occur is that they cause proton pumps to activate, which lower the pH and then weaken the cell wall. And then that cell wall, as the cellulose loosens, turgor pressure will expand and then elongate the cell wall. Other ways that auxins work is that high concentrations of synthetic auxins actually kill plants and are used as weed killers. And synthetically produced auxins in high concentration are considered herbicides. They also alter gene expression, and they can stimulate a sustained growth response. I'm going to stop here and show you a brief Bozeman segment on how auxins work. So as you can see, this is a video from Bozeman Science.
The first ones that was ever studied. And so if you put a plant next to the window and just let it sit there for a long time, what you'll find is that plant is going to start to orient itself towards the sun. And you can see all of these leaves are pointing towards the sun, and they're also going to move throughout the day. And so how do they do that? Well, one of the first scientists ever to do any work on auxin was Charles Darwin and his son. And basically what we found out is that auxin is a chemical. And basically what auxin will do is auxin is going to move to the shady side of a stem. And so if we've got auxin here, auxin is going to migrate to the other side. Let's say that the sun was now on the other side, then the auxin is moved back to this side. But basically what the auxin does is it's going to loosen up the cellulose in the cell wall. And as we loosen it up, it's basically going to make those cells a little bit bigger. And so I couldn't quite do this in the animation, but if you think about it, if the auxin were to move to this side of my finger and make that side of my finger longer, it's going to bend in that direction. Likewise, if it were to move to this near side or my palm side of my hand, it's going to bend it in the other direction. And so basically, depending on where the auxin goes, it's going to make the cells grow faster there, and it's going to make it bend in the opposite direction. Likewise, if auxin moves up to the top, it's going to make it go farther and farther. It's going to grow straight up. And so it's a great way for them to know which way the light is. Auxin's also going to affect the roots. It's basically what's going to happen is auxin's going to move against gravity. And if you think about that, how's that going to play out in the roots? Well, let's say that we have a root. Let's say we tip our plant on its side, and now we have a root that looks like this, and we've got a little root cap on it like that. Well, gravity's going to be pulling us down like this, and so auxin's going to move towards the top. So auxin's going to move up here. Well, what's that going to do? It's going to cause the root to grow more on this side, and that's going to cause the root to bend down. So it's going to go like that. And so it's basically, auxin's a great way for us to respond to our environment. Next one is going to be...
So the next plant hormone we're going to look at are the cytokinins, and these are named because they stimulate cytokinesis, or cell division. And actually, by having a proper ratio of auxins and cytokinins, we can have cell division and differentiation within the plant cells. Cytokinins as a whole slow the aging of some plant organs by inhibiting protein breakdown and stimulating RNA and protein synthesis and mobilizing nutrients from surrounding tissues. One of the things that's really important in terms of how cytokinins help plants is that they work with auxins and strigolactone to control apical dominance. So now, first of all, what is apical dominance? And we're going to take a look at that. But basically, apical dominance means that the growth of the plant is going up. The apex is always going to be the top. And so it controls the terminal bud's ability to suppress the development of axillary buds, which would be sideways growth. So we would have just long, tall plants if we did not have cytokinins and auxins and strigolactone working together to control this normally apical dominance. So again, we're going to take a break here and look at how Bozeman depicts this and shows you graphically how this works.
And so it's basically, auxin's a great way for us to respond to our environment. Next one is going to be something called cytokinins. Cytokinins, if you break down the word, it's really easy to figure out this one. It's basically cytokinesis. So we're taking one cell and we're dividing it in two cells. And so when does this happen? Well, if you think about it, a plant is going to grow in two different directions. There's going to be a plant that's going to grow up like this, and so we have this is going to be moving up. But there's also going to be lateral growth, so it's going to be movement in this direction. And so if we're moving in that direction, we can't just expand our cells. We're actually going to have to make new cells, and cytokinin is responsible for that. It's basically a hormone that causes our cells to divide, and that's going to cause us to grow to the side. And so if you think about it, we can respond to light that way. And so let's say that we have sun up here, so here's our sun again, smiling away. And let's say that there's nothing in the way, well then a plant is going to secrete a lot of auxin, so it can grow right up towards the sun. But let's say that we put something in the way. Let's say we put a barrier here so the light can't get through. Well, now a plant is going to increase the amount of cytokinins. That's going to cause more lateral growth, and so it can grow around like that. Once we get pure light again, then we're going to use auxin to grow right up towards it. And so that's, I mean, if you look at a forest, basically everything in the forest is in competition with itself, trying to get the most light. This is a cool little study here. Basically what they did is they applied nothing to this plant, a control, and then they applied a lot of cytokinins to this one. And you can see, even though they're the same age, this one is growing up laterally and this one's it's dividing. Next thing we...
Okay, so now the next plant hormone are the gibberellins, and they work with auxins to stimulate stem elongation. They do this by loosening the cell walls, allowing cellular expansion and the expansion of the stem. Gibberellins are also involved in seed germination and the growth of fruit. With seed germination, after water is imbibed in the seed, so the seed comes out of dormancy, the release of gibberellins from the embryo signals the seed to cease dormancy and to start germination. With fruit growth, gibberellins are used, for example, in the spraying of Thompson's seedless grapes to promote an abundance of that fruit. And many dwarf plant varieties have non-functional gibberellins, which is kind of interesting. Okay, our next plant hormone is abscisic acid, and this actually slows growth of a plant. So that means it's antagonistic to auxins and to the gibberellins. And so abscisic acid promotes seed dormancy, while gibberellins promote germination. And in some seeds, dormancy is broken when ABA is removed by being washed away with a heavy rain or by prolonged cold spells. What happens is that abscisic acid causes stomata to close to conserve water. So in this way, it slows growth. Two of the many effects of ABA, or abscisic acid, are then seed dormancy, but also because of that closing of stomata, we have drought tolerance. So ABA is the primary internal signal that enables plants to withstand drought because as it accumulates, it causes stomata to close very rapidly. So once again, here's Bozeman.
Next thing we have is the gibberellins. Gibberellins actually comes from an old story, and basically we had rice, and rice was growing in rice fields or rice paddies, and a fungus infected it. It's called gibberellic. I can't remember. It's a Japanese term. I'm not sure of the species name, but basically what it did is it caused the rice to grow incredibly fast, and then support its own weight, then it would fold over on itself. And basically what we found is it was causing those plants to increase gibberellins, which is a natural plant hormone. And basically what's that used to do is to control the yearly cycles of the plant. It tells them when it's time to become dormant, when to flower. Humans have started using gibberellins because we can cause seedless grapes to actually grow really, really quickly just by spreading it on them. Next one is abscisic acid. Abscisic acid, I always remember that as like the scissors, like a garden scissors. Basically what abscisic acid is going to do is it's going to do the opposite of what gibberellins are doing. And so in the fall, when our amount of daylight starts to drop off, at least here in Montana, then the trees are going to turn colors. And so how does the plant know when to do that? Well, they're looking at the quality of the light and the amount of light that they get. But basically what that abscisic acid is saying, it's time to cut off those leaves, and basically it causes them to fall. It causes them to suppress this fruit formation. It causes them to stop transpiration. And so I think of abscisic acid as basically a hormone that's causing everything to slow down and enter into talk about is ethylene. Ethylene, unlike the other ones, is actually a gas that's going to go outside of the parts of the plant. And so this is used in a positive feedback loop. And you probably notice that all the fruits on a tree will all ripen at the same exact point. And so basically what happens is if you get fruit that starts to ripen, so these apples right here, ripening fruit will start to give off ethylene, this gas. That ethylene will spread to all the fruits around it, causing them to give off more ethylene, and pretty soon all of them have started to go to become ripen at the same time. And this is super smart because you can attract things like birds and humans so they can eat the fruit and transfer the seeds somewhere else. And so again, positive feedback loop, and ethylene we find in different plants as well. So you could take a really moldy banana, put it right next to some apples, and they're going to go moldy quickly as well. And so basically those are hormones. It's how plants control and respond to their environment, and I hope that.
So as you heard with the Bozeman video, our last hormone we're going to focus on is ethylene, which is a gas. It's again involved in a positive feedback loop, meaning that once it gets started, it continues to accelerate and expand the response. It plays a crucial role in senescence, which is the programmed cell or organ death. Apoptosis is that programmed cell death. So when we have leaves falling off of trees, that's senescence. This leaf abscission is the process that occurs in autumn when that leaf falls off. Ethylene promotes the ripening of fruit. We know that when we put one ripe banana in with a bunch of green bananas, we'll soon have a lot of ripe bananas, and that's due to ethylene being released as a gas from the ripened banana. Plants produce ethylene in response to stresses like drought, flooding, mechanical pressure, injury, and infection. So now we're going to look a little bit about how do plants respond to light. So light cues many key events in a plant's growth and development, which makes sense since plants are autotrophs that are converting light energy into chemical energy. And the effects of light on plant morphology is called photomorphogenesis. Plants can detect presence, the direction, they can detect the intensity and the wavelength of the light. Blue light is considered the most important for phototropisms and light-induced opening of stomata. And this occurs by the reception of the light stimulus by photoreceptors. So there are two major classes of light receptors. There's the blue light photoreceptor, and there are phytochromes. So we will start the next section of this lecture discussing the two types of phytochromes and the blue light photoreceptors.